the other thing is, bottom line, a lot of dudes that can shred can't write cool riffs and tunes sometimes. So sometimes you get one without the other. Even if someone that loves shred, you can only listen to so much of it, because once again, it's supposed to be music, not the Guitar Olympics.
Joe Stump, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me over here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, so before we get started, I have to ask. So, is it? Do you prefer Joe, Mr. Stump, Mr. Joe Stump?
Joe is fine. Actually, it's funny because everybody, like my standard name, like official name when it comes to making records and all that nonsense is Joe Stump. But in my family, everybody calls me Joey. You know what I mean? So, but Joe is fine.
That's fantastic, man. Well, again, thank you so much. And I'm going to be totally honest with you. I really didn't know much about you until I got the press release for this album and the interviews. And being a musician yourself and a music fan, I would assume, like, it's interesting for me to know that even at 51, I never can hear all the music. And just when you think you've heard like what you need to hear, another artist comes and slides right in, and I was like, holy crap, how have I missed this? And like, I have to say that the album is fantastic. I absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So the last time Tower of Babel released an album was back in 2017, correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, we had well, what happened was it was quite a while ago, and then we had a falling out with our original singer, and then he registered all of the publishing in his name, even though I wrote all the music on the record, and then he proceeded to get the record taken down off of all the platforms and everything. So it's taken us a little bit of time to not just recover from that, but I wrote this new record, and by the time everybody put their parts on it, and we found a home for it, it's the years go by. Plus I've been doing like tons of other things in addition to just this, between Alcatraz and my solo career and all that nonsense.
Well, you're also an instructor, correct? Are you still an instructor over Berkeley?
I'm the metal. I'm an associate professor. I'm the metal specialist at Berklee College of Music. So I've been on the faculty since 1993. Year my first solo record came out.
Isn't that fucking crazy? Like, you gotta love being like, I'm the metal like expert at Berkeley. Like, I love that.
Yeah, the professor of metal. Yeah, it's not so bad. Plus it's a cool title. Or why does everybody come to me? Either they're metal enthusiasts or they want to get their technique in order and they want to shred. You know what I mean? So, and even though there's been so many different generations and subgenres, like players from all subgenres of metal study with me, mm-hmm. And I've seen all different generations of players throughout the decades. But sadly, my popularity has not gone down at all. It would be nice. I'd have a little bit more spare time to practice, but I'm still sadly very high in demand still.
That is so amazing, because one of the things I did want to ask you about was being a professor like you are, right? And of course, being Berkeley has such a rich history, but also it's very cultured when it comes to like the broad styles of musicians. As the metal guy, do you ever see some guitar players from like other genres, say like jazz, whatever, blues, that come in and they're just like, show me some tricks?
Well, I mean, most of the players that study with me are metal players and metal enthusiasts. Occasionally I would get somebody that they were a bit diverse and played different things, and they just wanted me to help them with their technique and stuff. But the other thing is, like, some players that play different styles, their pick attack and the way their pick hand operates is could be quite a bit different than a metal player, since a metal player is playing, with a heavier palm mute and with a distorted tone and all that kind of stuff, and also playing different types of lines, where somebody's playing jazz. the line, intervals between the lines, and are more complex, and wider and things like that. So and sometimes and different players that play jazz might tend to use different, obviously different types of scales, but also some different fingerings for other types of scales too that are more conducive to playing over to playing where the chord changes are, changing tonal centers so frequently, but the other thing is, it used to be years ago that most of the players that studied with me just wanted to be badass metal virtuosos. But now the college is a bit more diverse, so you could have someone that's going to be a music business major, but they just love metal. Someone that's going to be, in electronic music, like I had one dude study with me. He was a whiz in the electronic music department, but his favorite band was Gojira. So we love metal, so he studied with me. Because even if you're majoring in something else like music business or film scoring or music production and engineering, you still have to have a principal instrument. So, and then you have to finish at least 4 semesters on your principal instrument. So I get players like that, but of course I get many players that just want to be like, badass metal virtuosos and shred.
And I love that, because another thing, because I'm a musician myself, and I am not a virtuoso by any means, but much like being a fan of music, you can never learn it all. And it's always something exciting to learn, to a new skill to pick up. I just started learning how to do chord inversions, and I feel like a 12-year-old who just got his guitar again, because now all of a sudden I'm like, wow, there's this whole other thing I'm unlocking as far as the guitar goes. And for someone like yourself, who's got such a great history in heavy music, how often do you find yourself hearing something or saying like, I want to try that? I haven't done that before. Because I'm assuming that even someone like yourself hasn't done it all,
Oh yeah, well, I'm always exploring. I tend to not venture too far out of the things that I love, but one of the, just in a musical sense, one of the things I use quite a bit is the Hungarian minor scale. And the Hungarian minor scale, if for those of you scoring at home that are musicians or guitar players, it's the harmonic minor scale with a raised 4th degree. And so with a particular scale like that, you also get you get a whole bunch of different chords, and some chords that you wouldn't normally associate with hard rock and metal. So I end up using like on my new solo record that I just recorded, or in past times with Alcatraz and stuff, I've used chords and arpeggios that are not commonly associated with hard rock and metal, So I'm always looking to broaden I'm always looking to broaden my vocabulary, and as well as taking the amounts of knowledge that I have and utilizing it further, and many times when I compose, and I'm composing melodies, I'm using not just one particular scale, but sometimes a combination of scales and different things like that. Because being on the faculty, do I have to know all these things? Yes. You know what I mean? I have to know, chord inversions. I have to know every chord inversion of, all of the standard set, not only all the triads, but, all the standard 7th chords, and also, some of the more altered 7th chords. I have to know how to play every inversion of diminished major 7, which is a diminished triad with a major 7, or every inversion of dominant 7 flat 5. But does that come in handy? Well, I mean, a diminished major 7 is a Hungarian minor chord, and there's a tune on one of my solo records called Demonic Trance, and I'm playing I'm playing these chords from Hungarian minor that would sound kind of jazzy in one context, but the way I'm voicing it and the context I'm using it, it sounds quite dark and evil.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
As I like to say, I use the amount of I use my chordal knowledge for evil as opposed to good. You know what I mean?
And it's so interesting because with the new album, which is, I have to say again, this is my first time really hearing you as a solo artist. Like I've listened to you in Alcatraz, did not really know much about this, but when this album made its way into my desk and I'm listening to it, I was so blown away by the fact that there's such a broad array of classic metal influences. I mean, like we got some Deep Purple, you got some Accept, which I heard some Accept in there. I even heard some Dio, but the thing was that you or even some Halloween, which is, I don't know if that was intentional, but like it's one of those things where like if you're an artist and you have those kinds of influences, it is very hard to not cause someone to roll their eyes because you're like, oh God, it's another band that sounds like Accept. You've managed to take all of these influences and put them together and not make it sound like you took from any one particular. How hard was that for you to do? Or was that a very natural instinct?
That's very natural. Do I listen to Halloween? No, but I do like some power metal. I do like a bunch of power metal stuff. But this record very much Deep Purple, very much Rainbow, very much, and then you have like stuff that sounds like it could be on an early Dio record, and so Rainbow, Purple, and Dio would be the first ones to come to mind. But then you have like some of the stuff in the instrumental sections that sounds like like a trade off between the guitar and the keys, or a classical section where it could be on like an early Rising Force record or something. One of Yngwie's earlier work. So it kind of runs the full spectrum. But I mean, those are all things I mean, all I do is channel the music that I love, and I try to put my own little stamp on it. You know what I mean? So yeah, like was I intending some of the stuff to sound like Accept? No, because it's more of a hard rock record than a metal record. But I love Accept, and I really like Wolf Hoffman quite a bit. But the other thing is, two of my favorite guitar players are Richie Blackmore and Michael Schenker, and those are also two of Wolf's favorite guitar players. So it all kind of gets passed around and passed down and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I'm a fan of Wolf's as well.
And one of the things I did love about that, because actually just hearing you talk about that, is that a lot of these influences, I feel like so many, at least I see a lot more, I feel like with younger artists, is that they have an influence, but then they grab onto it. They won't let it go. And so when they try to put material out, it ends up sounding so close to it that for someone like myself, who's like, I'm like, yeah, I've heard this done before and I heard it done better by the older guys. So you guys are good. But it's when they can manage to take all of those influences, kind of meld them up into something and turn it into something really special, or even kind of like a hybrid of sorts. Because like my favorite song on the album was Blind Are Your Eyes. That is hands down to me like my favorite song. But what I loved about it was that musically it sounded like Dio, with like Dio's band, with Michael Kiske from Halloween singing. And I was like, okay, you just took two of my favorite acts, put them together, and made one really good thing, as opposed to being like, oh, it's another Dio ripoff, or it's another thing like that. The vocalist seems to really have a lot of that character to be a chameleon of sorts.
Yeah, like he kind of Joe Joe Amore, who they refer they refer to him as the French Dio, but he'll sing slightly different, depending on the track, and have a different vibe depending on what the track is and everything. And he's got a great set of pipes, and he has a very strong, he has a nice sense of melody, I write the music and he writes the lyrics and melody lines. And Mark Cross, the drummer, who actually did a short stint with Halloween as well, playing drums, and a stint with the Scorpions. Mark's a powerhouse drummer, but Mark also helped Joe with some of the lyrics and the melody lines as they were recording the vocals at Mark's studio in Greece. So they worked together on a bunch of the stuff. But Blind to Your Eye, somebody else told me it was like, reminded them of Accept too. And for me, when I was writing that, I was thinking it was more of like a more metalled out version of like a more commercial, like Joe Lynn Turner era Rainbow thing. is the way I was interpreting it myself. So imagine like you took like you made you made like all of a sudden you made Richie Blackmore a bit more metal. You know what I mean? And he he was going to write like a more metaled up version of Stone Cold or something.
And that's one of the things that when I hear that from artists, is that especially when they can take maybe even an art like a band or a musician, but then like combine different eras of an artist, and that's one of the things I felt like you did, especially with the title track, which by the way is fucking fantastic. And it kind of like lyrically, it kind of embodied this like denim and leather kind of vibe, Saxon. And it almost felt like it could be autobiographical in a sense, where it was kind of tracking a lineage of sorts. How did you feel about Joe coming in with lyrics like that seemed somewhat personal, but at the same time, it seemed relatable to anybody?
I think Mark also helped him with that as well. That one, and I think Mark had quite a bit. Like him and Joe really worked on that one together. So I mean, some of the vision for the vocal for the content and the lyrics also was Mark's. You know what I mean? Like I thought it was cool, and I just kind of listened to the melody and the lyrics, and I was like, okay, sounds badass to me. You know what I mean? I'm not that deep. I'm too busy immersed in the music. You know what I mean? Because people ask me if do you write lyrics? It's like, no, I'm not that deep. I'm like, your basic guitar, your basic guitar dude.
That's so funny because what was it? It was I remember it was years ago. I think it was like it was when Ozzy put out No More Tears, and I remember watching an interview with him, and he said something about I've been reading all the reviews and they're talking about how it's my most personal album to date. He was like, I didn't write almost any of these lyrics. He was like, most of these lyrics were written by other people. But I think that's the kind of thing is that if you're conveying a message, and if it's well written enough, when you project that song, it can make everyone think that is yours, and I love that.
Yeah, so they did a nice job on the lyrics and melody lines to the record and stuff, and that track, you never know how stuff's going to come out. When when I write the music, I'm not really sure how it's going to shake out. As far as the lyrics and melody lines go, but all in all, I'm very pleased with the result.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about too was the artwork. The artwork is fantastic. It is so grand and it's so big. And I think since the resurgence of sorts of vinyl, I'm starting to see a lot of bands putting that into it again, putting that artwork back in, because you're able to finally look at it and in the size that we used to when we were kids, which got lost during CDs.
No, it is very cool. And once again, and Mark really drove the bus on that. I just was originally we had like our backtrack or backdrop for shows had like a similar thing like that, but then he kind of streamlined it and worked with the artist Jobert Mello over at Sledgehammer Graphics. He did the he did it, and he did like my last couple solo records too. He's awesome, and he's a great artist, and that was like Mark's whole thing, and like the guy that's at the bottom of the tower, like Mark was almost thinking like he's going to be in multiple covers, kind of like Iron Maiden has Eddie or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's going to be something that kind of lives on, And I'm like, okay, cool with me. Once again, I'm like, I kind of let the guys have free range. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, fine with me. You know what I mean?
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm like focused on the music, and I was like, yeah, does it look cool and badass? Awesome,
Because and that's another thing I wanted to ask you about was kind of what you're talking about with the not writing the lyrics or whatever, and really kind of spearheading the music aspect of it. Even though you're not a lyricist, like you said, you're quote unquote not that deep though. How important is it for you to be able to kind of look and see the lyrics that are being written and go, I don't know about that, or that's fantastic, but can we, do you see what I'm saying? Like, so is there a criteria that let's say when Joe came in with lyrics? Like, what was the criteria for you to look at this and go, this is it?
I pay more attention to the melody lines and things like that, and a lot of times the guitar will imply the melody line. So a lot of the melody lines are kind of implied by what's going on guitar wise anyway. So the lyric portion to me is almost kind of secondary, but it should be something cool. And I've had things happen where I've worked with singers before, and it's like, oh, that you went in that direction with that one. That seems kind of odd, but came out cool, so you never know, like what whoever you're working with, because I've written stuff, where I write the lyric, I write the music, and then the lyric. And when I write the music, I don't just write a riff here, or a riff there. I write the entire tune, arranged, and this is the main riff, this is the verse, this is the chorus, this is the middle eight, any of that nonsense, and have the whole thing pretty much arranged and ready to go. So I've wrote tons of a bunch of tunes when I was working with Graham Bonnet. You know what I mean? So I would write something, and then he would go in one direction or whatever, or working with Doogie White, or now Giles Lavery sings in Alcatraz, so it'll be a different thing working with him, and working with Joe. Other singers I've worked with in the past, Mike Becerra, that sang with Yngwie, sang with Loudness, sang with Obsession, and a lot, and all of these great singers, they're all quite experienced and usually know what's going to fit the song properly.
And so that's actually really cool to hear that, because I feel like sometimes, especially so I'm a songwriter myself. I'm a lyricist also. And maybe it's just because I am a lyricist, is that I think I would struggle sometimes knowing someone else is putting words down when I'm like, oh, I want to see what you're doing, So there really is a level of trust, though, that you must have in Joe. Then if he was going to bring something, that you've got enough confidence to know, okay, he's not going to do something terrible here.
Oh no, I trust Joe, and he's the only thing with him. The only thing with him being not being French, is just his handle on the language, on the English language. So Mark also helped him with certain lyrics, and maybe if you did this would be a little smoother. So you had that aspect of the whole thing going on. So that was another reason, Mark was kind of helping him with some of that action. But Joe's, he's been around the block, made tons of records and stuff, so he certainly knows what he's doing.
So another song that really hit me hard, which again, kudos to this album, because there's nothing that amps me up more than when I've found a new artist that's new to me, I should say. I dove headfirst into this album, and I've been listening to it nonstop.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
And and again, you being a music fan, I'm sure you can relate to that. Is it like when you hear something and you've heard something really good, the first thing you want to do is listen to it again, because the first run through, you've kind of okay, what did I just hear? I know I like it, but now you go back and listen to it. That element of surprise is now gone. And I noticed that with each listen, I was hearing different things, and not that there was not a lot of ear candy, but it was so, God, I have a hard time with words today, but it was complex, complicated sounding, if that makes sense. In other words, someone like you could have just shred right through the whole thing. But there is a very good sense of melody, attention to the progressions of the changes, the verses, the choruses, and then you let it go when it's time to play a lead. How is that? Because that's kind of rare for a lot of people who are in that kind of shred territory.
Well, I'm always going to play. I'm always going to play what's proper for the context of the track, and I'm the one that's dictating the action anyway. You know what I mean? Since I'm writing the music, and I'm also writing, what I'm going to solo over as well. And the other thing is, it's not hard for me to play with more restraint on on certain things, because like I have done so much like balls out like 2 billion mile an hour, shred pieces guitar wise, like with my instrumental stuff. You listen to Burn It Down off of Diabolical Ferocity, you'll get the idea. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't have to hear a ton of my catalog to get the point. So I get to shred. I get to shred plenty on my solo material. But even with my solo material, regardless of how much fast guitar there is, there's always a strong sense of melody. There's always cool riffs. I mean, because it's music. It's not like some fancy guitar. It's not like fancy lick number 62 connected to 74. You know what I mean? And then I'm gonna end it at like sweep arpeggio 27. I mean, it's not like I got a lab coat and I'm going through all that. It's supposed to be music.
See, and that's the thing is that I feel like sometimes artists lose that grip, where they lose that attention to detail, where it's more like, okay, let's see how fast I can get this. How complex can I make it to the point where it's making people see double? Whereas like, I mean, like this material is actually very reminiscent to me to, I don't know if you've Axel Rudy Pell, like, who
yes, yeah, like it is. It's kind of like I like Axel's records quite a bit, and Axel, like myself, is a huge Blackmore fanatic. But Axel also likes Yngwie and likes Michael Schenker. You know what I mean? He checks all the boxes, likes Uli John Roth, likes all the same dudes I like, and I like Axel's records quite a bit. And Axel is a brilliant composer because Axel does everything. He writes the lyrics, he writes the melody lines. You know what I mean? And Johnny that sings with him has like an amazing voice, just a great voice and stuff, just killer. And the band does a great job. He's got former Rainbow drummer Bobby Rondinelli on there, so he's got a killer band, and Ferdy on the keys, who's an awesome dude. We played a festival, and when Axel was on the bill and Alcatraz was in Sweden. I was talking to Ferdy, and I spoke to Axel briefly and stuff, but yeah, like imagine if you took like like that kind of record, maybe made it a tad less commercial, because Axel's stuff's a little bit more AOR-ish than this, but still has that strong rainbow / power metal vibe, and added a bit more shred to it, kind of up the level of, not that Axel, nothing about Axel's playing or anything like that, but kind of added, like took it up a notch as far as the shred vibe went on it.
Yes, because one of the things because he was another one that for some reason came like, so it's actually really cool to hear that you like him and you also know him, because
yeah, I'm a huge fan. I might have most of his catalog, because I really like the tunes, and I'll listen. And Axel's such a strong composer, and he's got the same background as me. So I also listen to his records for compositional ideas and compositional content and stuff, and sometimes I'll vibe where he's coming from on certain things. Yeah, I like him quite a bit, and that's kind of the way I would describe this record. If you like Rainbow, Purple, Axel Rudy Pell, Dio, it's all in that, and then granted you have some of the neoclassical Yngwie induced shred action, but I'm kind of more in the Blackmore camp on this record as compared to like the full on, Baroque fret frying action.
Yeah, which is so funny, because even to the listener, me, like I hear that and sometimes I'm like, okay, that's great, but I want melody, I want a hook, I want a chorus, I want a verse, and I love the fact that, again, like when I first heard Axel, that was one of the things that surprised me, because I was like, wow, I was not expecting so much catchy hooks and things like this. And you have that.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad that I was purposely trying to achieve that. So that's a high compliment, because I like his stuff quite a bit, and it's extremely rich in melody. It's very rich in melody, and like his riffs are great, his hooks are great. So. That's awesome. That's nice of you to say.
Well, like I said, it's very true, because as much as I love I love metal music, obviously, and I love good guitar playing, and I can get down with the shred. But the fact that attention to melody, the songwriting, it almost seemed like that the song was as important, if not more important, than what you're able to do.
Oh yeah. The other thing is, bottom line, a lot of dudes that can shred can't write cool riffs and tunes sometimes. So sometimes you get one without the other. Even if someone that loves shred, you can only listen to so much of it, because once again, it's supposed to be music. Not the Guitar Olympics.
So I guess the one more thing I wanted to bring up was Alone in the Desert, which again was kind of reminiscent of the Dio thing. But what I loved was that the keyboards took a whole other life on with Mistheria being on and like it kind of brought in this kind of like chaos and madness to it, as opposed to like what you would just normally expect to hear in like a keyboard sound. Like that brought so much to the song.
Oh yeah, I'm quite fortunate, as all the dudes in the band are like serious players, like really outstanding musicians. And the maestro, of course, is, he's a complete badass. I mean, he plays, Bruce Dickinson didn't tap him for the Mandrake project for nothing. He's an assassin on that thing. And and same thing. So yeah, Alone in the Desert is very much. What am I thinking there? I'm thinking like, Gates of Babylon, Stargazer, that kind of thing. I mean.
Yes, you nailed it. I don't mean to get excited, but that was exactly what I was thinking. Was that whole like the Stargazer?
Oh yeah, does it sound like Stargazer? No, it does have like that kind of very 70s kind of open main riff and stuff, and 70s kind of riff action, and then it goes into the Eastern thing right before the chorus, but that's exactly what I was thinking, that long, and of course the guitar solo is that long epic Blackmore induced Eastern thing, where I'm kind of like channeling my inner evil Richie Blackmore, kind of like, what am I doing there? I'm kind of like evil Richie Blackmore meets Andy LaRocque and Hank Sherman or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so funny that you said that, because again, kind of bringing it full circle again, is that you've managed to take a lot of these influences and kind of compile, like just kind of compress them all together and create something that's fun to listen to, and that even to my old cranky metal ears, it sounds fun and it sounds good and it's reminiscent of the classics that I grew up on, but it doesn't sound like them. And so I have to tip my hat to you for making such a great move on that, because that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, well, I just make, I just create things I just take like the influences of all my favorite metal bands and heroes and everything, and then I just try to put my own little stamp on it, and hopefully it comes out cool. I mean, because I love to listen. I'm not like one of those guys. Do I love to listen to Tchaikovsky? Yes. Do I like to listen to Vivaldi? Yes. But I also love to listen to Axel Rudy Pell. I also like to listen to Rainbow and Richie Blackmore and Deep Purple. I also like to listen to the early Scorpions. I also love to listen to, Yngwie's entire catalog, or like, or any of the King Diamond or Merciful Fate things, or Accept, or, like all kinds of stuff.
Well, so I guess to close things out, I have to ask, so what does the rest of 2025 have in store for you? Like, are we going to see some touring, or like what's going on with the whole thing?
Well, Joe Stump's Tower of Babel will be out. We'll be out playing some shows. Not exactly sure the timeline on that, because I've got some Alcatraz touring like towards the end of this year, and the Maestro's quite busy with Bruce Dickinson's Mandrake thing. They have a lengthy tour coming up in the fall as well. So now everybody's like, we're trying to get the calendar together. So when after the dust clears, that we'll be able to start in on a bunch of live dates and some touring, and there might be the kind of thing where like Giles Lavery and Jimmy Waldo from Alcatraz also play in Warlord. So they're talking about like maybe us doing some dates with Warlord, or me pulling double duty and doing some dates with Alcatraz as well. So those things are open, and so there's a bunch of stuff in the pipes. But it'll be quite hectic, hectic for me, because I got a European tour, in the fall, plus the Berkeley semester will be in full swing. So it'll be the kind of thing where I'll start working 6 days a week starting in the first week of September, and then that'll go right up into the holidays.
Well, you're going to be a busy man, I can tell you that. But I have to say, first off, Joe, it's been so great getting to know you and talking to you, and you're an incredible human being, and it's been so great talking, and it makes me want to really dive a little harder into your stuff to really hear, since we've connected and we've talked about these things, is that to go in with a fresh set of ears and to kind of hear what.
Yeah, like that. My last instrumental record was Diabolical Ferocity, and the one before that, Symphonic Onslaught, and The Dark Lord Rises. Those are my last three, and my best. I mean, that's another thing that's very gratifying, is I've been at this a long time, and I made my first record in '89. I was in this metal band Trash Broadway that was signed to Torrid Records, which were the ones that put out the famous Exodus record, Bonded by Blood.
Yes, that's true. That's, man, what a connection there.
Yeah. So if you heard my guitar playing on that record, was I a bum then? No, but obviously, if you hear my early solo records compared to like my latter ones, I mean, it's very gratifying to be doing my best work later on in my career, and I'm on it. I'm always playing. I still play guitar hours and hours a day. I mean, plus doing the instruction thing, I pretty much got a guitar in my hands anywhere between 6 and 9 hours a day, whether I like it or not. I mean, the interview action is cutting into my practice time to a certain extent. So, but it's, so what am I doing as soon as this ends? Exactly. You know what I mean? I'm gonna tear the Zoom setup down and start to do some damage on here in my room. And then, so that's on the docket for the rest of the day. The rest of the day is playing.
Okay, so I got to ask, is that thing plugged in?
No. It's just sitting in my lap because it feels a little bit more comforting talking with a guitar in my hands than it would be if I was just sitting here myself. So it feels a little less strange. Because usually if I'm giving a lesson or a master class, I have a guitar in my hand, so it's natural for me to for me to speak with while I'm holding one, But yeah, no, it's not plugged in,
Can you give me a quick shred though? Can you give me a little quick?
Yeah, well, I have my watch on, so I can't really.
There you go. Amazing. Well, Joe, thank you so much for doing this, man. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
Yeah, you as well. It's always nice to talk to a fet, and I'm glad you enjoy the record so much, and it means a lot. Like someone like yourself having such a strong expertise in metal. That obviously to hear all those things, so and hear the nice things you said about the record, that's awesome. That means, I'm in the ballpark then. So that's cool. And where are you located at?
I'm in South Carolina, actually.
South Carolina. Okay, cool.
We used to live in Atlanta, my wife and I did, but we moved here to be close to my in-laws. And so we moved out here last year to be close to them. They're getting up there in age, but we wanted to be able to enjoy them while we can, so we just moved out here.
That's awesome.
So it's a little bit of a culture clash for us, but other than that, it's okay.
Atlanta's a pretty hopping town. Yeah.
Yeah. And here it's pretty laid back here. And so it took us a little while to get used to the lack of traffic, which is not a horrible thing.
That's true. I mean, because I'm from New York and I live in Boston now since I'm at the college. So yeah, I know all about traffic.
Incredible. Well, Joe, you're an amazing dude. Thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
All right, thanks for having me, and be good.